important because we have an enemy that steal, kills, and destroys, right? And so when we have that, what that says to us is, you know, why do we need to be able to protect that? Because the plans in the earth, he comes to still kill and destroy. And if we're not operating in discernment, we could be stolen from, we could be destroyed. And that's not just going to impact us. If God has created you and put something in you, it's for the gift of the kingdom and in others. And so that affects you. It affects the people who love and care about you, and it may affect those that you're meant to serve in the earth. And so it's critical that we have discernment, because there's a real enemy that doesn't want us.
My specific interest is, what is the importance of being able to discern the motives of those who have the right to rule, of those who wield power? As a Christ follower, why is it important for us to be able to discern the motives of those who wield? Just like the Wisemen.
I think it's because, well, partly because, the song that says, "Take the name of Jesus with you." You're proclaiming whatever it is that you're not standing against, or what you're standing for. And the Wisemen, they took in the information, and then they discerned, and then they chose. We have to also look at the fruit, right? Not everybody, and I think you even said this. I remember you saying this at the gala. There's a video that you said this. You said something to the effect of, like, being part of GCBN, it's going to impact those who aren't Christians too, right? That was one of the video snippets that I saw. So you are impacting not just Christians, but you're also impacting those who are not, based on what you choose to do. So we have to take that information, and we have to discern that based off of scripture, based off of the Holy Spirit, based off of your teaching, what you've been taught, and what you've learned. And then you choose. And sometimes we don't choose well, sometimes we don't choose well. But we look at the fruit, we look at I started to say the qualities, but maybe qualities isn't the right word. We look at how their walk is, and sometimes whether it's leaders, or even in a business or the military or the government, not everybody is going to be just like you or follow, the path that you are following, but you have to take a stand and decide. And sometimes that may not be good. Like, it may not be good for you to take a stand. So I guess back to your question on, like, the Wisemen, how, they discerned what was true, but they had to get the information. They had to hear, and they had to decide. They had to discern the information and then decide which way they were going to go. And it does say that they went a whole nother way. Like, they went way away from where the king was. And was that out of protection for them, or protection for the child, or I don't really know, but they knew where they were going and why they were going there. They saw the star, so that
you actually did a good segue for me, because the next discussion is, I think the primary importance of the discerning of the Wisemen is that it helped them to protect the newborn king by not telling Herod where he was. And then later, Joseph protects him also by taking him out of Israel to Egypt. So this can be seen as setting boundaries, getting back to, what does the Christmas narrative have to do with wellness? Well, both the Wisemen said, no, you're not going to cross this boundary, because we're not going to let you go to where the newborn king is. And then Joseph took him to Egypt and said, no, you're not going to cross this boundary, right? So yeah, absolutely. Did you have anything to add?
I did, because one of the things that really spoke to me too, when you asked that question, was that Discernment allows us to know when to engage and when to disengage. And that's really important in boundary setting, like as we segue into that, because some types of boundaries are engagement and some parts of boundaries are disengagement. And so when we have discernment, that's what the wise men were doing. They discerned, and they could have engaged, or they could have engaged Herod, or they could disengage, and they chose disengagement based on what they discerned in of the time and his motive. And that's the part of where we need to have Holy Spirit, because a lot of times you're taking risk either way. And that's why we have to partner with that, because and we do get it wrong sometimes, and that there's always consequences, positive and negative, to any choice we make. But the Lord does have a heart of protection and provision for his children. And when we know when to engage and disengage, it helps us know how to operate in the earth with the natural and with the supernatural, because we know the enemy uses people and he will exert his motives through that. And so when we have that discernment, it helps us know the heart of what direction our boundaries need to go.
Yeah, I was going to have us discuss how setting boundaries protect emotional and mental health, but we did that with Nehemiah 2 weeks ago, so we're not gonna revisit that just now. But I did want to make an observation before we talk about the shepherds. I think that the shepherds being the first to arrive at the nativity foreshadows Jesus as the good shepherd, foreshadows the one who would give us ultimate peace of mind and who would give us ultimate emotional stability. I was reading that passage and I was like, wow, it was the shepherds who got there first. And Jesus calls himself the good shepherd. The night he was born, the angels proclaimed peace on earth, goodwill to men. And the good shepherd is the one who brings ultimate peace and ultimate goodwill to men. So that just struck me, and I wanted to make that observation. But it may not, I don't know if you guys believe it has anything to do with this discussion or not, but it just struck me, about the shepherds being the first to arrive. So we have 2 questions left, and hopefully it'll take us to 1 o'clock. Anyway, I just talked about it. I want you guys to comment on the shepherd's arrival. Do the 2 of you or anyone over on Facebook, can you see how that could be a foreshadowing of Jesus, the Good Shepherd?
I'm like pausing. I'm like, is Jessica good?
You go ahead, Lisa. I'm still
It reminds
percolating.
me, and I don't know, maybe it's just the way my brain thinks, but I think of like plays and things that have been played out of the nativity, at church or, different things. And last year, Jaden got to be one of the shepherds, in the play, and they didn't say anything, obviously, because they were shocked and they didn't say anything. But in my brain, as soon as you said that I don't think I've ever made that correlation. I think I heard it recently say that the shepherds were first there, but it didn't correlate. The ending part, what you said was that Jesus is the good shepherd. And that is very interesting. So I'm thankful to hear that. The shepherds, we know the story. They're in the fields, they're doing their job, right? And then all of a sudden, boom, this angel comes, it's bright, and they're probably pretty afraid because they probably don't see many things happening at nighttime. I don't
That's
know.
why the angel has to say, "Fear not." Don't be afraid.
Yeah. And so, so I think, I don't know what your question was. I guess in relation to the Good Shepherd and Jesus, I feel like it kind of coincides with the whole Bible, right? And the story of how Jesus is meek and the shepherds are there, and the 90 and 9, and just so many different correlations to that. And then they dropped their staffs and ran, you know, at least in The Chosen, that's what they did. And so I just feel like, I don't know, I kind of picture it back into, yes, it's on words and yes, it's text, but when it's played out in a play or in a scene, I can see it easier. And I just remember that part of it, you know, behold, the angel comes and he says, fear not, but they're just struck. They just don't know what to say, or not that Jesus is that way. I'm not making that correlation, but
no. But the other thing we said we were going to talk about is wonder. The whole wonder
yes.
of this message. You know? Jessica,
Yes.
any observations regarding the shepherds and the correlate or the foreshadowing rather?
The first thought that came to me, the word I heard was quiet place. And it's this idea that, you know, when I think about the nativity and where Mary and Joseph were in that time, right? Like they've traveled all this way. She's super pregnant. Like, you know, those are hard things. And then they could find nowhere to stay. And they're staying in the conditions that they're staying in, that the good shepherd meets us in the low of the low. And he meets us in the quiet place so often before anybody else can arrive. And that's what hit me about that. Like there, I mean, in a way, they in some form of representation, they were in the low of the low. In one of the hardest things there, I mean, giving birth is not an easy thing, right? Like she wasn't there with the midwife, she wasn't there with her people, she wasn't in the comfort of her home, she wasn't in this place, not even of luxury, she wasn't even in the place of comfort, she wasn't in the place of having all the resources that she would normally have even at home to have the support that she needed in that time. And um, so to be in this place where they're kind of in the low of the low and the shepherd comes first, right? Um, and what I love too about the shepherds is they're operating in just as much discernment and obedience, and that they did it with a sense of wonder. Because I think about the shepherds versus the wise men. How much more learned were the wise men? How much more power did the wise men have than the shepherds? How much more, you know, in the status of the world, how much higher did the wise men sit? You know, but God chose those that go low, you know, and Christ did the same thing. He came from this place of elevation to come low, like the shepherd, right? He came from being Noah. He sat in heaven before he came. He was a part of the Godhead before he got here. Right? Like he knew the things, but he came low. And I think there's a representation in that too. Um, and just a beauty of stepping into that very personal space. To me, there's something about the representation of that good shepherd that in this story, you know, because we talk about it with all the bells and whistles, and we even talk about it in the fact that it wasn't very glamorous, but what does that really represent in the space of what our lives look like, in the place where the good shepherd shows up, you know, in the temperature of our lives where the good shepherd shows up. So
I have to add this point, Jessica, when you were talking, they came with haste, right? They didn't just be like, okay, I'll be there tomorrow, or let me put it in my calendar, or let me phone a friend. No, they dropped what they did and they came with haste. And isn't that what God does? Like Jesus comes with haste. Like he doesn't wait or tarry, which with Martha, we talked about Martha yesterday on Transformation Tuesday. You know, Jesus waited a little bit before he came to help Lazarus, but his story for that and his reasoning for that was different. It was so that others would see and he would get the glory because of what was going to transpire or take place. He comes with haste. He doesn't, he is a gentleman. He is loving and kind, and he comes with haste. He is here to help. Sometimes it doesn't feel like he is or he will, but that the truth of that is that he is. And very much like the shepherds and how they just dropped what they were doing and they came with haste. The good shepherd is that way. And I just think that's great.
We've already begun to discuss the last point I would like for us to end with, and that is, you know, the shepherds. We see them with wonder. They, you know, this is a wondrous thing to them, and they marvel at it. Right? They marvel that they're receiving this glorious message through angels. They marvel, they wonder that they were chosen to receive it, and they marvel, they wonder, knowing that the king is. There's something childlike about this response. You know, and Jesus tells us, you have to come as little children. But this last question is twofold. One, how does wonder, or rather the feeling of awe or amazement, contribute to emotional stability and mental health? And two, how does childlike wonder increase this emotional stability and mental health? How does the feeling of awe or amazement contribute to emotional stability and mental health? And two, how does childlike wonder increase it? That's our last discussion before Lisa takes us out. Jessica?
Yeah. I think about wonder and the awe and amazement, and wonder is so much this space where we have this soul level impression of something that's bigger than us, something that's beyond us. I think about it like even when I've had the fortunate gift of being able to travel different places, and I was just telling somebody yesterday, like one of my goals in heaven is Jesus and I are going to take a tour of the garden earth, because there's so much of earth I want to see, because creation is one of my pathways to the Lord. And so like I'm always in awe and wonder when I see things bigger than me, like when I go to the ocean, when I go to the mountains, when I see just all the details of creation, I'm filled with awe and wonder. And when I think about that, like it helps bring perspective. I think there's a gift in that emotional stability because it brings perspective to us and the significance and sometimes the lack of significance. The reality with our mental health sometimes is we get so overly focused on a thing that we don't really realize that sometimes it's not as big a thing because our
Right.
brains tell us it's so big and so cumbersome, and it is like one of the things we deal so much with depression and anxiety is this idea that this is never going to end, right? Like people start to develop the belief that this is just my new portion forever. And the gift of wonder brings this perspective that there is something bigger beyond the struggle, bigger beyond the challenge, bigger beyond every part of my experience in this earth. And I think there's hope in that, you know, and I think it gives us something to hold on to, in that bigger, in that beyond, in that, and it gives us this space to dream and imagine who is that and what is that beyond us that may have more power, more control, more goodwill, like because when I think about the awe of that, it's not usually a dread. you know, there is existential dread, but that's a conversation for another day. But and I think the childlike part of it is that it's just an even deeper release of those things we hold on to, those things that are our experience or our fear or the enemy wants to hold on to. When it's childlike, we just have the freedom to let it go and just be. Right. Like the beauty of that, like I started this conversation talking about trust on my end, like the childlike part of it is trust, because that's what childlike faith is. The beauty of that is that children are able to trust without challenge in a way that adults have had so much experience that their brain has done the thing that God did, wired to protect it. But sometimes you have such a web of protection by the time you hit adulthood that you don't have the freedom just to exist inside of the intimacy of that relationship and just the boldness of just pure trust, right? When you have an infant, there is pure trust because that child is completely dependent on you for survival, right? And even small kids, I love that 3 to 5 year old range. It's one of my favorites in kid range because they are so full of wonder. They're so full of curiosity. They still have quite a bit of trust, even when they've had some challenging experiences, they still have so much of that. And I think it marks the freedom that they get to exist inside of that space.
Yeah, and that wonder, I like the way Jessica put all of that. question was, how does it promote emotional stability and mental wellness or mental health? As Jessica said, when you have trust, you're content. And that is what mental health is, the ability to be content. So we've spent this hour talking about integrity, protection, discerning, as we looked at how Joseph and the wise men responded in this Christmas narrative. That integrity discussion, the fact that Joseph was aware of culture as well as aware of what it was that God was requiring of him. And then we spent the last 10 minutes talking about awe, wonder, amazement. And that's what we learned from the Christmas narrative, that you can walk in integrity, that you can have discerning, that you can learn to protect others, and that you can experience wonder and amazement. Lisa?
That's so good. Thank you, ladies. Thank you for letting me participate too. I'm like, oh, I got to say something. And I'm thinking, it's great. May we never lose our childlike wonder, right? May we never lose that. And there's no stress there. I think of that story, the song, All Joy, No Stress. That's what it made me think of. When you have that childlike faith, it's just no stress. I want to have no stress. Okay, well, no stress. Okay. Tuesday, we have our Transformation Tuesday. So check us out here on the Facebook page. We do have Instagram, we have LinkedIn, we have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have a Facebook group. If you're not connected to those channels, make sure you do that. And there's not all of the same things are in all the channels. So you may see more quotes. I've been pulling quotes from you guys from last week, and I'll pull some from today to share. It was super powerful. And so Tuesday, check that out. It's noon Eastern time right here in the Facebook group, or you can join us on Zoom as well. Just make sure when you come on Zoom to identify yourself, just so we know you are who you are. And then on Wednesday next week, I think we have Sherry coming, and Miss Beth will be back on Wednesday. And then the next week is going to be Christmas. How is that possible? But it's here. And we pray that you guys have all the things that you need, and you have the power to do it, and you have the energy and supernatural power, like Jessica said before, supernatural power and energy and time to get all the things done that you need to get done. I don't know if you guys can hear Jude in the background. If you can, I'm sorry. Pray for Miss Beth and her family. It has been a long year, a great year, but it's winding down, and we're going to start 2025 with a different theme. I will give her the honors of sharing that with you guys. If you were at the gala, you know what that is. I'm just excited to be able to do that with you guys. If you're not a GCBN member or a GCBN sponsor, you should check that out. It's GCBNetwork.com. Check out those opportunities and see where you would fit in and plug in. Yesterday, I told to Miss Toby, I was like, GCBN is like the best kept secret. We need to like spread that secret out. So maybe on your Facebook channels, you can share what GCBN means to you and share the website, and that will allow you to spread your wings and to let other people join with you. It's kind of selfish if you're not sharing it, so don't be selfish, okay? And that's really all we have that I know of that I'm thinking about. The gala was fantastic. The photos are out there. There's some videos that we're going to be sprinkling throughout, so make sure you tune into that and check that out. And be sure to tap in 2025. If you haven't, and you've kind of been on the sidelines, or maybe you were all in and then you took a little bit of a break, it's time to jump back in and be a part of this organization. It's what makes it so great. Okay. And we're missing you if you're not here. And if you are here, we're so thankful that you're here. Pamela, Jessica, thank you so much. Thank you from the member side, from the team side, from the Christian side, from the sister side. I get something every time that I come and that I listen. So thank you so much. I hope you guys have a great Christmas if we don't see you before, but we want to see you back next Tuesday and next Wednesday. And you guys have a great rest of your week. Bye, guys.
Bye.